My ex accidentally texted in our group chat. I can't believe he fell for it. I got everything. I replied, wrong number. Then I forwarded the text to my lawyer to reopen our settlement for fraud. Her lawyer was left frantically claiming it was a joke. I, 34M, thought I had finally moved on from the worst chapter of my life. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago, and I was slowly rebuilding everything she had torn down. Then my phone buzzed with a message in our old family group chat that changed everything. The group chat was a relic from better times, just me, my ex-wife, and her sister. We used to share vacation photos and dinner plans through it. After the divorce, none of us had bothered to delete it. It just sat there, a digital graveyard of our former life together. I was at my desk, reviewing quarterly reports when the notification popped up. My stomach twisted when I saw her name appear in that familiar chat window. We hadn't spoken directly since the final court date, communicating only through lawyers when absolutely necessary. Her message made my blood run cold. I can't believe he fell for it. I got everything. The business, the house, even the retirement accounts. He never suspected the offshore accounts or the transferred assets. My lawyer was brilliant. Sometimes I can't believe how easy it was to fool him completely. I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times before the full impact hit me. She had sent this to our old group chat instead of whoever she meant to text. The woman I had loved for 8 years, the woman I had trusted with everything, had just accidentally confessed to committing fraud during our divorce proceedings. My hands shook as I typed back. Wrong number. The response was immediate. She began frantically typing. I could see the dots appearing and disappearing as she presumably panicked on the other end. Then came a flurry of messages claiming it was all a joke, that she was just venting, that none of it was real. But it was too late. I had already screenshotted everything. The irony wasn't lost on me. For months during our divorce, I had felt like something was off. She had been too confident, too prepared. When we divided assets, she seemed to know exactly what she wanted and what she was willing to give up. Her lawyer had been exceptionally thorough, almost like they had insider information about my finances that I hadn't provided. During our marriage, she had handled most of our bookkeeping for my consulting business. She had access to all my accounts, knew my passwords, and had signing authority on most of our joint ventures. I had trusted her completely. When we separated, I assumed she was just being vindictive by taking such a large portion of everything we had built together. The settlement had been brutal. She got the house we had renovated together, 60% of my business assets, and a significant portion of my retirement savings. Her lawyer had presented documentation showing she deserved this split due to her contributions to my business success. At the time, fighting it seemed more expensive and emotionally draining than just accepting it and moving on. I had been living in a small apartment, driving my old pickup truck, and working twice as hard just to maintain a basic standard of living. Meanwhile, according to her social media posts that friends occasionally mentioned, she was traveling, shopping, and living comfortably in our former home. But now I had proof that the entire settlement was based on fraudulent information. I immediately called my divorce attorney, Marcus. He had warned me during the proceedings that something felt off about her financial disclosures, but we hadn't been able to prove anything concrete. When I read him the text message, he was silent for a long moment. Marcus told me this was potentially huge. If we could prove she had hidden assets or provided false information during discovery, we could petition the court to reopen the case for fraud. He said he would need to examine all our old documentation and start investigating what assets she might have concealed. The next few days were a blur of gathering evidence and reconstructing our financial history. Marcus brought in a forensic accountant who specialized in divorce fraud cases. We began tracing every transaction from the 6 months before our separation through the divorce proceedings. What we found was worse than I had imagined. She had been systematically moving money out of our joint accounts for almost a year before filing for divorce. Small transfers at first, amounts I wouldn't notice, but they gradually increased. She had opened accounts at 3 different banks, none of which appeared in her financial disclosure during the divorce. The forensic accountant discovered she had also been inflating business expenses and redirecting client payments to accounts I didn't know about. Money that should have been considered marital assets had been hidden in accounts under her sister's name and even under her maiden name at banks in different states. Most shocking of all, she had taken out a substantial loan against our home's equity just 2 weeks before filing for divorce, claiming it was for business expansion. That money had disappeared into her hidden accounts, but the debt remained attached to the house that she kept in the settlement. Marcus explained that we had grounds for both civil and criminal fraud charges. The text message was the smoking gun that proved intent to defraud, but the financial evidence showed the actual scope of her deception. We filed a motion to reopen the divorce settlement based on fraud within 2 weeks. The court granted an emergency hearing, and suddenly her lawyer was scrambling to respond to our allegations. Her attorney's response was predictably desperate. They claimed the text message was taken out of context, that it was just venting between friends, and that there was no actual fraud involved. They insisted everything in the original settlement was legitimate and that I was just being vindictive, but the forensic evidence spoke for itself. Update 1. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after we filed our motion. During that time, her lawyer made several attempts to settle out of court. They offered to return 25% of what she had received in the original settlement, then 50%, then finally 75% plus attorney fees. Marcus advised me to reject all settlement offers. He said if we proved fraud in court, we could potentially recover everything plus punitive damages and attorney fees. More importantly, there could be criminal consequences for her actions. I won't lie, part of me was motivated by revenge. She had humiliated me during the divorce, made me feel like a fool for trusting her, and left me financially devastated. But a larger part of me was motivated by justice. If she could do this to me, how many other people might she victimize in the future? The night before the hearing, she called me directly for the first time since the divorce was finalized. Her voice was shaking as she asked me to reconsider pursuing this case. She claimed she was sorry, that the money wasn't worth destroying her life over, and that she would return everything if I would just drop the fraud charges. I told her she should have thought about that before stealing from me for over a year. She began crying and said she had been scared about her financial future after the divorce, that she had panicked and made bad decisions. She begged me to consider that we had once loved each other and to show mercy now. But I remembered how confident and cold she had been during the divorce proceedings, how she had looked me in the eye during depositions and lied about our assets, how she had played the victim while systematically robbing me blind. I told her to have her lawyer call mine if she wanted to discuss settlement terms. The hearing was held in the same courtroom where our divorce had been finalized. Seeing her again brought back a flood of emotions: anger, disappointment, and surprisingly, pity. She looked exhausted and defeated, nothing like the triumphant woman who had walked away with most of our assets 6 months earlier. Marcus presented our evidence methodically. The text message, the forensic accounting report, documentation of hidden accounts, and proof of transferred assets. He showed the court how she had systematically deceived both me and the legal system during our divorce proceedings. Her lawyer's defense was weak and desperate. They continued claiming the text was a joke, that the hidden accounts were for legitimate business purposes, and that any transfers were made with my knowledge or consent. But they couldn't explain why none of these accounts had been disclosed during discovery or why the transfers had been structured to avoid detection. The judge was clearly disturbed by the evidence. She asked pointed questions about why these accounts hadn't been disclosed and how such systematic deception could be explained away as miscommunication or oversight. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge ruled that clear and convincing evidence of fraud had been presented. She ordered the original divorce settlement to be vacated and scheduled new proceedings to divide our assets based on accurate financial information. But the real victory came when she ordered the case file to be forwarded to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Update 2. The weeks following the hearing were a whirlwind of depositions, asset recovery, and criminal investigation. Her hidden accounts were frozen while the court determined how much money needed to be returned. The DA's office opened a formal investigation into potential criminal fraud charges. She was forced to hire a criminal defense attorney in addition to her divorce lawyer. The costs were apparently draining her resources quickly, especially with her assets frozen and her income from my business cut off. During the new asset division proceedings, the forensic accountant determined she had hidden approximately $340,000 in various accounts and transfers. Combined with the inflated settlement she had received based on false information, she owed me close to $500,000. The house went on the market immediately. She couldn't afford the mortgage payments without access to her hidden accounts, and she needed to liquidate assets to pay back what she owed. The irony was bitter. The home we had renovated together, that she had fought so hard to keep, was now being sold at a loss in a rushed sale. Her sister was also dragged into the investigation since several accounts were in her name. Apparently, she had been unaware of the fraud and was cooperating fully with authorities. The family relationships that had been used to conceal assets were now falling apart under legal scrutiny. Marcus kept me updated on settlement discussions, but I was no longer interested in protecting her from the consequences of her actions. The criminal investigation was proceeding regardless of our civil settlement, and she was likely facing felony charges for the scope of the fraud. 3 months after the hearing, the DA's office filed formal charges: grand theft, fraud, perjury, and several other related counts. Her mugshot appeared in the local newspaper's crime section, which felt surreal considering she had once been my partner in everything. The final civil settlement was reached 4 months after I had received that accidental text message. I recovered all hidden assets plus interest, attorney fees, and punitive damages totaling nearly $600,000. More than the money, though, was the vindication of knowing I hadn't been paranoid or suspicious. I had been systematically deceived by someone I trusted completely. Update 3. The criminal case took 8 months to resolve. Her defense attorney negotiated a plea deal rather than go to trial, probably because the evidence was overwhelming. She pleaded guilty to felony fraud charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison plus 5 years probation. She was also ordered to pay additional restitution to cover the costs of the investigation. During the sentencing hearing, she was given the opportunity to make a statement. She apologized to me directly, claiming she had been desperate and scared about her future after our marriage ended. She said the money had never made her happy and that losing my trust and respect had been punishment enough. I felt nothing listening to her apology. The woman I had loved was gone long before that accidental text message revealed who she had really become. The house sold eventually, though at a significant loss due to the rushed timeline. I used part of my settlement to buy a smaller place in a better neighborhood, somewhere with no memories attached. I also invested in expanding my consulting business, which had suffered during the stress of the divorce and legal proceedings. Her sister reached out to me once during this time to apologize for her unwitting role in the fraud. She said she had trusted her sister completely and never imagined she was being used to hide stolen assets. I told her I understood. I had trusted her sister completely too. The most unexpected consequence of all this was how it affected my perspective on relationships and trust. I had assumed the divorce was just the end of a marriage that hadn't worked out. Discovering the systematic deception behind it made me realize I had never really known the person I had been married to. But it also restored my faith in justice. For months, I had felt like a fool for being so easily manipulated. Learning that trained lawyers and forensic accountants found her deception sophisticated and carefully planned made me realize I hadn't been naive. I had been the victim of calculated fraud. The legal bills were substantial, even with attorney fees awarded in the settlement. But Marcus had been right. Proving the fraud in court rather than accepting a quick settlement had been worth it financially and emotionally. 1 year after receiving that accidental text message, I was in a better financial position than I had been even during my marriage. The business was thriving, partly because I now understood exactly where my money was going. The stress of the legal proceedings had been enormous, but so was the relief of finally having answers to questions that had haunted me. I never deleted that group chat where she accidentally sent the message that unraveled her entire scheme. Sometimes I scroll back to read it again, marveling at how one moment of carelessness revealed months of calculated deception. She had been so careful about hiding her fraud, but modern technology and human error brought it all crashing down. Her release from prison is still several months away. I don't know what her plans are afterward, and I don't care. My lawyer advised me that her felony record will make it difficult for her to work in any position involving financial trust or responsibility. The consequences of her choices will follow her for years beyond her prison sentence. The group chat notifications are turned off now, but I kept the evidence of that one crucial message. It sits in my phone like a digital scar, a reminder that the person who hurt me the most was also the person who accidentally gave me the tools for justice. Sometimes people ask me if I regret pursuing the criminal charges or if I feel bad about the prison sentence. The answer is complicated. I don't take pleasure in anyone's suffering, even someone who hurt me deeply. But I also don't regret holding someone accountable for systematic fraud and deception. That accidental text message revealed more than hidden money. It revealed that my entire marriage had been built on lies I never suspected. Someone willing to steal from their spouse over the course of years, to lie under oath in legal proceedings, and to feel triumphant about fooling someone who loved them completely doesn't deserve protection from the consequences of those choices. I'm dating again now, carefully but optimistically. The experience taught me to pay attention to financial red flags and to maintain some independence even in committed relationships. But it also taught me that most people are honest, that the legal system can work when you have evidence, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply the truth. Every time I get a text notification now, there's a split second where I remember that moment of reading her accidental confession. It was the beginning of getting my life back, even though it felt like the end of everything at the time. Sometimes the most important messages are the ones never meant for you to see.